Hello, and welcome back. I'm so excited that you joined us again. We're going to keep things a little bit more casual today and talk about an important topic, vacation. We all work so hard in our day-to-day that it's very important to have quality time with our family, our friends, and just time to unwind for ourselves. So, how do we maximize our travel by minimizing our travel expenses? I've been fortunate enough to go to Europe twice in the past year, once to Spain, once to both London as well as Northern Italy. I've also had the opportunity to travel to Maui with my girlfriend, and finally we have a trip coming up to Singapore. All four of these flights are nonstop, and they all were less than $400 round trip per person. And I'm talking all in, including all the taxes, surcharges, fees that come into play when you're booking airfare. And those prices really enable us to get out there more often and spend less money on the flight, or usually the most boring part of the trip, and more money on the experiences and the activities that we'll do once we actually arrive in the destination. So today we're going to cover three main topics. The first of which is how to book these cheap flights and why a planning mindset is going to be paramount to getting you the best deals. Second, it's how to make the most of those cheap flights. With basic economy cropping up and usually being the cheapest option, it's very tempting to take those flights, but there might be additional fees. So how can we avoid some of those fees by having loyalty to a certain airline or airline alliance? Last but not least, we're going to talk about preparing for your trip in general and really speaking to the currency side. A lot of places in the world may not accept your credit card. Perhaps they do. We're going to touch upon what credit cards you should be using and shouldn't be using while you travel, as well as why I will never use a currency exchange place unless I'm in a dire situation. So that covers what we're going to be talking about. And today we're going to be doing things a little bit differently. Instead of me just looking at the camera and talking to you, we actually want to make this more actionable. So I'm actually going to be doing a presentation style so you could follow along more clearly. You could see clear links to all the tools that we're going to be discussing, and hopefully it just sinks in that much more. All right, let's get into it. But first, we're going to start with some disclosures that are written here on the slide. And I also want to point out that, like all my videos and everything on my channel, these are my own personal viewpoints. They do not reflect my employer, my clients, or any of my other professional relationships. I'm just doing this for the community here. So saving money on vacations, how can we make your next vacation and your next flight, and for instance, in this video, cheaper than your last vacation, right? So we're going to talk about three main topics. First, saving hundreds on flights by adopting a planning mindset. That's going to be more of that philosophical piece. We're also going to talk about some tools and some tactical advice so you could get started immediately if you choose to do so. Second, making the most of cheap airfare and basic economy. Basic economy is so frequently seen when you're booking tickets as the cheapest option. How do you make the most of it? How can you make that experience a little bit more pleasant and enjoyable? And last but not least, once you arrive to the destination, it's avoiding those foreign transaction and currency exchange fees that are really going to tally up and make the overall cost of your trip perhaps in the unpredictable territory. Let's just avoid that and mitigate that risk from the beginning. So saving hundreds on flights by adopting a planning mindset. Before I get into the philosophical, which is where I really want to focus on, let me just talk about two tactical tools. First, Scott's Cheap Flights, and as well as the Flight Deal. These are two newsletters that are really well done. The team at Scott's is particularly incredible. Their design is just beautiful, but also it's because they charge a more premium membership for those who choose to get the flights a little bit early and have a little bit more say in what flight deals they receive. All that said, let me just start right here by saying if you're not in the financial place where you can necessarily afford additional expenses right now. Let's say you owe money on your home, your car, your student loans. You really should not be subscribing to these added temptations. You really should be unsubscribing from all temptations coming to your inbox. I'm a firm believer of inbox zero and treating your inbox almost like a to-do list or one aspect of your to-do list and keeping it nice and clean. I will actually talk about that in a future video, but even with the addition of the Gmail promotions tab, which will sort of siphon out those marketing emails and put them all in a single folder for you, I'd say just unsubscribe from all of that. Get all that junk out of your life. Right now, you got to focus on paying back debt and ensuring that you're in good financial standing, getting your credit rating up, etc. Now, that said, we all need vacations, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to travel far for them. So, when you're thinking about vacation, especially if you're in a situation of that nature, I would say you probably want to stay local and minimize your expenses. Now, if you're saving money for a vacation anyways, and you know that you're budgeting for that and you're doing a little bit better when it comes to paying back bills and any debts owed, let's continue. Otherwise, if you owe a lot of money, this is not the video for you. I'd rather you spend your time on my first video, which is the net worth calculator, just to see how much you owe, and we could sort of game plan from there in some future videos. So, like I said, Scotch Cheap Flights, the flight deal, 2 amazing newsletters, but we don't want them cluttering your inbox with unnecessary promotions that are leading to perhaps like FOMO, like the fear of missing out, or other temptations to book a trip that you may not be able to afford. If you could afford it, great. Try both of them. Scotch Cheap Flights has a premium version. I think it's about $50 a year. I am a premium subscriber because I found value in the free emails to the point where I felt like supporting the team and what they're doing. I also had the ability to toggle off some of the emails and only keep the emails pertinent to the airports that are actually in my immediate area. That said, I would not recommend adding an expense to your life before you even know what it is. So get the free version. Once you book a deal and you're like, wow, I just saved a decent amount of money on that deal, then you could treat yourself to the actual premium version. But for now, the free version is probably going to work just fine for you, and you could take it from there. So let's talk about the more philosophical side of this, but that is the planning mindset. So as a leave behind and as a homework from this video, I really want you to sit down with your spouse, your friends, your family, or even by yourself and just think about everywhere that you've been in the world, right? And even if you haven't had the chance to travel outside the United States or outside of your home country, that's fine. Just think about the places that you've been nearby that you've really enjoyed, or think about the places that you've seen in TV shows and movies that have really sort of appealed to you for one reason or another. I want you to write those places down, places you've been, places you'd like to go, and maybe like a one-sentence reason on why or what sort of inspired you to get there. Once you write that down, then you could better take these emails that are coming from these cheap flight deals and say to yourself, oh, is that a place that's on my list? If not, then perhaps you don't want to even look at that list. And if it is, great. Now you could actually start planning a vacation around a place that you wanted to go. I will say, though, when these newsletters start coming in, there's one thing that you want to look out besides the destination and the price, and that's going to be the time frame. So, for instance, if you're only able to go to a place for like June to August, and you know that it's insanely warm in that place from June to August, and it might not be that pleasant, don't book the deal because the fare is cheap. Really think about the full experience and make sure that where you're traveling somewhere, you're not actually traveling in their really harsh weather season or their super rainy season or their winter when it's just freezing cold outside and it's just not going to be a pleasant trip. Instead, think about where you live. For instance, I live in New York City, and I know that around the time of January to March, after the holidays are over and winter is just becoming brutal with a lot of snow, that is when I love to travel. So when I see deals to go somewhere warm, like perhaps South America or the Caribbean around that time, my eyes light up and I say, wow, it would be so nice to just get out of the the harsh like winter here. And it's not all that bad. I'm being a little dramatic, but to just get out the winter for a little bit and go somewhere that's a little bit warm and forget about walking through slush. So the philosophical mindset is going to lead me to one of my favorite quotes. This is by the Stoic philosopher Seneca, and it's simply, if one does not know to which port one is sailing, no wind is favorable. Now, this could have so many meanings to you in your professional, your personal life, in all areas of your life. But for here, we're going to almost take it at face value. If there's a cheap fare somewhere and it's a place that you don't ever want to go to, or that you've been to and you don't actually have fond memories of, it's not me saying that it's not worth giving them a second chance and going back, but there's a lot of places to explore in the world. So, you might not want to go back just now. That said, it makes it very easy to get that email that came in and delete it and just keep it at that. So, think about where you want to go, upload it to either Evernote, your Google Drive, or some other, maybe your Dropbox, somewhere that it's always going to be accessible to you. Just like your email is always accessible to you. You could even keep it as an email to yourself. And think about that when a new deal comes in. Now, that said, you may have never considered going to a place like Ecuador, and then a flight deal comes in for Ecuador, and it's around a favorable time of the year. So for me, that might be, the opportunity to go to Ecuador in maybe late February or March. And I think to myself, well, I don't know. I never really thought about going to Ecuador before, but a friend of mine is from Ecuador, or his family's from there. And that would be sort of cool to get a better sense of his family's upbringings. Also realize that, wow, the Galapagos is in Ecuador and there's a lot of wildlife there, sea turtles, dolphins, and a ton of marine life. And that would be really cool to see that. I love dolphins and seeing animals, that are in their natural habitat like that. There's also the cloud forest of Ecuador, so you could see really interesting and beautiful birds like toucans. And then Ecuador's currency is the US dollar, so it's a fairly easy vacation, even though there's a little bit of a language barrier with their primary language being Spanish, of course. But it's so nice that you don't even have to change your currency. And we'll talk more about that in a second. But so when you see these deals come in, think about it. Do you have allocated vacation time for that time of year? And if you do, then maybe it's worth considering and doing a little bit more research, looking on YouTube, of course, and other websites to see, well, like what would I want to do in Ecuador and what would my vacation look like and how much would it cost me? And perhaps it's a more appealing vacation than that trip that you wanted to do back to Europe. And you get to see somewhere new. So let's move on to the next topic, and that's making the most of cheap airfare and basic economy. So two things that I really want to talk about here. The first is that loyalty really does matter, right? So for me, I know that American Airlines is going to sort of get me to most of the destinations that I want to go to when I'm traveling for business. And using those business flights with my frequent flyer number, I actually could accrue loyalty points, and that's going to help me in my personal travel. Like recently, I had a chance to go to Jackson Hole. It was amazing. The Grand Teton National Park was gorgeous. It gave me a brand new perspective on how much beauty there is here in our home country of the United States. And I highly recommend getting to Grand Tetons or Yellowstone, which is right near there as well, and just experiencing that. That said, flights to Jackson Hole, as well as many other smaller regional airports, are super expensive. It cost me more to get to Jackson Hole than it did to get to Europe the last time I went. But American Airlines is part of One World Alliance. I tend to take One World Alliance quite a bit when I travel abroad, and I look for deals from that One World Alliance so I could use something called code shares. That's when I could actually purchase my ticket on American Airlines, and even if it's a British Airways flight, for instance, to London, I will actually get full credit on frequent flyer miles from American Airlines. So code shares are going to allow you to purchase a ticket on a different airline through the airline that you use more frequently. And then you could use your frequent flyer miles to get the maximum number of points, segments, and dollars spent to your main frequent flyer mile program. Because I've reached the gold status with American Airlines, that means that my basic economy flights are a little bit more pleasant. So even on my basic economy flight to Jackson Hole, I was upgraded to an exit row seat, which usually would have cost maybe $50 or $60 for each way, but they upgraded me for free because I have some status with the airline and I fly them quite often. So even if you don't fly that often, it is worth getting a frequent flyer mile number and attaching that to your travel, and also looking for deals from the alliance that's going to be most beneficial to you. A lot of people ask, like, how do you choose an airline? And customer service and price is all going to be a part of that. But at the end of the day, it really comes down to where are you traveling most often and which airline is going to be the easiest way of getting you there. American Airlines goes to 2 of the major cities that I need to go to on a monthly or quarterly basis. And I know that they have flights one after another through business hours on the hour. So that makes it very comforting for me to know that if I miss my flight or if a flight is delayed, there's another flight within an hour, and ideally I could still get to where I'm going on time. So frequent flyer numbers, code shares, and airline alliances are really going to help you out here when it comes to making the most of basic economy. The other, just to sort of recap that, loyalty matters, right? So status with an airline can mitigate the downsides of basic economy. Furthermore, if you have the right credit cards are going to unlock lounge access for you. So for instance, I use the Chase Sapphire Reserve card. I know the Amex Platinum card. These both unlock lounge access. For the Chase Sapphire Reserve, that's going to be in the form of a Priority Pass. And for the Amex Platinum, that's going to be in the form of the American Express Centurion Lounges. So these are all going to make the layovers that you experience, especially with discounted airfare, there's probably a higher instance of layovers, a little bit more pleasant. It's going to save money on snacks, beverages, just going to give you access to a clean bathroom, which sometimes that seems to be the most valuable benefit of these lounges. And it's also going to save you money on Wi-Fi. I know a lot of airports are starting to offer Wi-Fi for free, which honestly, it's so nice that they're doing that. But some airports still are charging for Wi-Fi, so it's nice to get the lounge access, and almost always there's free Wi-Fi at least. So, think about what your credit card already offers you and see how you could further take advantage of that. And when you're booking a layover, when you have a flight that has a layover somewhere, also consider, is there enough time for you to actually leave the airport and explore wherever that layover is? Because that might be a little added bonus to your vacation just for the price of the cab fare or the transportation to get in and out of the major city from that airport. So all things to think about. Last but not least, some credit cards will give you airline incidental credits that could make the flight a little bit more enjoyable, since those credits can cover any expenses that are usually directly from the airline. That could include lounge access to that airline specific lounge, as well as checked bags if you're traveling for a longer vacation and are packing a little bit heavier. Ticket change fees if you want to get out of an airport sooner or a little bit later because you're really having a great time on vacation and want to extend it out for another couple hours or another couple days. Seat upgrades, as well as any food or beverages purchased when you're actually on flight. So that covers our second topic, which was making the most of cheap airfare and basic economy. Let's move on to our final topic, and that's avoiding foreign transaction and currency exchange fees. A big part of the expenses that can potentially rack up are those foreign transaction fees, which will be charged by your credit card anytime you swipe in a foreign destination, unless those fees are not included in your credit card. Again, the Chase Sapphire Reserve card, the Amex Platinum card, the Amex Gold card, these cards are not going to charge you those foreign transaction fees. So that could actually ultimately save you a lot of money in the long run, as well as currency exchange fees. So for currency exchange fees, I have 3 quick tips on the currency exchange fees. One is you really should be dodging those currency exchange boots. Sometimes they'll say they guarantee buybacks at a certain amount, and they're encouraging you to take out more money than you possibly need. One, that's a risk because you're carrying around all this cash at once, since you're incentivized to exchange more of your local currency to the foreign currency at one time. 2 is they're going to charge you an arm and a leg for those currency exchange fees. And if you look at the fine print, Those buyback guarantees probably incur fees on their own as well. In general, I've had very lousy experiences with those places, and I would truly recommend not utilizing them. Another option is if you know someone who's in the local area, then instead of actually using a currency exchange place, you could just simply look up what is the currency exchange rate, and perhaps they will be able to change the currency for you with their local bank. They might actually get a better deal, or you could actually plan ahead and go to your local bank and change currency ahead of time. Once again, this is going to give you that risk of holding too much currency at once, but it will be a little bit easier to bring that currency over, and you'll get a better deal on it most likely. My favorite tip, and part of the reason for that disclosure in the beginning, was I'm a big fan of the Charles Schwab bank account that comes with the Visa debit card. And that Visa debit card, it's called the Platinum debit card. That's actually going to let you avoid currency exchange fees for the most part, as well as the ATM fees while you're abroad. I registered for this card before my first trip to Japan, and I really just could not believe how easy it was to, instead of worrying about how much local currency I'll need before I arrive and how much of my US dollars I want to transfer over to yen, I was able to just simply go to the ATM wherever I was walking around Tokyo, take out the money that I needed, and not worry about getting charged a rip-off rate for my currency transactions, but also getting all of those ATM fees, and they could be pretty expensive, like up to $5 or $6 for each withdrawal, getting all those ATM fees refunded by Charles Schwab. And if those ATM fees were not refunded for some reason, you could just let customer service know that you incurred an ATM fee, and sure enough, when you check back on your statement in a couple of days, they were able to help you. So I was checking out my Charles Schwab account before I decided to start recording this video, and I noticed that they have a referral program now. So there's a bonus available. If you deposit $1,000 or more, you actually get a $100 bonus from Charles Schwab. I don't know the fine print details. I can tell you that if you sign up, it does not help me in any way. I do not receive any commission from Charles Schwab. I don't think they're allowed to incentivize me to do that. So full terms and conditions and everything else, as well as the full table, because you do get more money if you deposit. You do get a bigger bonus if you deposit more money, is all going to be available through the link that's under the video. I highly recommend considering it as an option for you to sign up for. There are other accounts that offer free ATM reimbursements, but there's not necessarily, I don't know how they operate when it comes to the currency exchange rates and if they're giving you a fair price once you take out money abroad. I'll also note that even if you're not traveling abroad that often, this has been a very helpful card for me, even when I'm traveling locally. So let's say I'm going out to a bar somewhere and it's cash only, and they only have one of those unbranded ATMs that are a little bit sketchy, but they do charge like some sort of like $2 or $3 fee. And it's always frustrating to take out, per se, like $20 and get a $2 fee. That's a 10% cost for taking out that $20, which frankly is ridiculous. And then knowing that Charles Schwab will reimburse me for those costs, it makes it a little bit less painful to sort of take that money and pay cash only, even though I know that I'm still sacrificing my credit card points. But we're going to be talking about credit cards and how that could help with these foreign transaction fees, etc., in a future video. I will say, though, if you don't know if you have credit card foreign transaction fees, I do recommend calling your card company. And before you tell them that you're actually traveling, or while you're telling them that you're traveling, and they could put those safety precautions on your account, you should also ask, are foreign transaction fees applicable to my account? And if they are, try to negotiate with them. Try to take those off your account, especially if you're a good customer and you've been loyal to them for a couple of years now. So to recap, we spoke about saving $100 or more on flights by adopting a planning mindset. Like I said, Scott's quotes it at $550 saved per flight. I don't know if I've been quite that high up, but hopefully this saves you more money on your next flight than your last flight. Second, we talked about making the most of cheap airfare and basic economy. And again, that's going to be through loyalty, through specific airlines and airline alliances, as well as just using your credit card benefits to get lounge access and make layovers a little bit more pleasant. And last but not least, avoiding those foreign transaction and currency exchange fees, as well as those ATM fees that come with using ATMs abroad and even locally. And again, my recommendation there is the Charles Schwab bank account. And if you don't qualify for that for whatever reason, then it's talking to your local bank and seeing what you can do with your current credit card mix, as well as utilizing your local bank to trade currency ahead of time. So let's wrap up and get back into the video. Awesome. How was the presentation style? And the presentation itself? I would love your feedback. I also want to hear where you're excited to travel to next. I'm super pumped about my vacation. Even talking about this with you all, it's just making me that much more excited to get out there and explore more. But I hope that you left here feeling confident that your next trip doesn't have to be as expensive as your last trip. Hopefully that means that you get to travel a little bit more often and unwind, so that when you do go to work or go back to your day-to-day, you do so as the best version of yourself because you're relaxed and you're ready to go. I also hope that once you book something, you're thinking about that trip over time. I really do think, and stats support, that sometimes almost half of the enjoyment of the trip is going to be that anticipation of the trip actually coming up. So get out there, book something, save money, but more importantly, figure out that list of where you want to go and get ready to look for deals on those places. Before we close out for today, like I said, leave some comments below. Where are you going? What feedback do you have for me? And also share this with any friends who are thinking about traveling as well. Get them excited too. Experiences are always better when they're shared. And last but not least, if you like this, give me a thumbs up, subscribe, and let me know how I can make these videos more engaging for you. The next part of this video is going to be how to actually save more money once you've arrived at the destination, not just getting to the destination. So I'm excited to share that with you next week. All right, I'll talk to you soon. Peace.